We are very privileged today to have the Deputy Chief of Chaplains for the United States Army Chaplaincy with us, Chaplain Green. He is going to be sharing about his life and ministry, God's call on his life, how he got from kind of point A to point B. He's going to be sharing what that call looks like and a little bit of kind of what the Army is looking for in chaplains. So we have a very diverse group of people here today that are being part of this. From what I know of the people that are registered, we have people that are seniors in college right now that are working out a call to ministry. We have folks that are in seminary that are currently studying for ministry and are looking at this idea of being a chaplain. We have chaplain candidates. We have pastors of churches. We have, I believe we even have a seminary professor or two on here, and we also have an endorser or two on here. So we have a great group of people here today. And of course, we have Chaplain Green that's going to be talking to us. Just as a little bit of rules of engagement for us, we're going to have a time of question and answer, and we're going to get to as many of these as possible with Chaplain Green. So I would ask that if you have questions specifically, that you would type them into the comments box, and we will get to as many of these questions as we possibly can. I would also ask you that if your questions are specific about your case, if you're in the process with us, just hold on to those and email us separately or call us separately. We'd love to talk to you about those. Want to get kind of big, broad questions about the Chaplain Corps and calling to ministry for Chaplain Green. So if you would do that, we'd really appreciate it. And keep your mics muted. That'd be great. If I mute you, please don't take it personally. These Zoom calls are kind of new for all of us, and they're a little bit fun trying to work through all the technology. So with that said, we'd like to welcome Chaplain Green. Chaplain Green is, as I said, our Deputy Chief of Chaplains. He has been the deputy for about a year now. He is also one of our proud former prior enlisted soldiers. So once upon a time, he was a 13 Bravo, which is a cannon crewman, and he was also a field radio repairman. So in layman's terms, what that means is he knows how to fix things and he knows how to blow things up. So he has a very diverse background that I'm going to let him talk about here in just a minute. So I'd like to welcome here Chaplain Green. And Chaplain Green, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to ask you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit more of your background, where you come from, and how God is using you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. What an absolute honor and privilege to spend some time with individuals who are interested in our United States Army Chaplain Corps. This, for me, really it's a treat, and I really appreciate the team reaching out and asking me to do this. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a native of Savannah, Georgia. Grew up on a small island in South Carolina called Hilton Head Island. It was there on Hilton Head Island and partly in Savannah, where my parents introduced me to the church very, very early. And when I moved from Savannah to Hilton Head, I would say that process became even more solidified through a very small community of individuals who cared for me, loved me, and helped raise me. Now, when you hear people say, hey, it takes a village child, I will honestly tell you just a few things about my background that'll help you to understand why I say it like that. So my mom and dad are native Hilton Head Islanders. And when we moved back home, back to Hilton Head from Savannah, Georgia, when I went to school, many of my teachers were teachers of my parents. And in fact, one of my teachers lives right down the road, if you will, from my grandmother. And she had a really interesting name for me. She used to call me by my grandmother's maiden name or my mom's maiden name, and then my and the last name Green. So she used to call me Lawyer Green. It was growing up in that small community that really helped me significantly in a family of a brother, older brother, and 3 sisters, and a church called the First African Baptist Church of Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. That's where I pretty much got my start. And really, those individuals taught me the importance of loving people, respecting people, and really just getting along and around with folks in the world. And so I would say that from those very humble beginnings, I think I got the best of worlds, and that I grew up in a loving home and also a loving religious community as well.
Awesome, sir. I can only imagine what that would be like having everybody having taught your parents too. I'm sure you got some interesting stories about your parents when they were coming through, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it also helped me to walk the straight and narrow when I was in school as well.
So they probably knew your parents really well, right? And they go home and talk to them if
Yes,
you weren't towing the line, right?
absolutely, no kidding.
So, sir, can you give us a little bit of a overview of your story of how you came into the chaplaincy? Where did you first feel that call to ministry, and from ministry, take us to how you kind of narrowed it down to ministry in the military, and particularly down to the Army?
Okay, so the interesting thing about my start, and you mentioned it up front, and that is I served as an enlisted soldier on active duty, and I did that for really like 6.5 years. And I was a cannon crewman as well as a radio repairman. So while I was serving in Germany as a cannon crewman back in the olden days in the 80s, that's when I got my call to ministry, believe it or not. I got a call to ministry, and really, I would like to say that my first official act as a chaplain probably came when I was enlisted. We had a very unfortunate event happen in our unit, in that artillery unit, where a track broke and one of our teammates passed away. And my first sergeant, who was also my senior drill sergeant in basic training, asked me to do a prayer. He said, "Hey, because he knew about my walk. He knew that I had, I'd given my life to Christ, and I was serving in one of the local chapels on the base. And so he asked me to do that prayer, and I did. From there, once I got the call, I immediately knew I wanted to be an Army chaplain. Immediately, it's like I've got this call. I want to be an Army chaplain. I love what I do, and I want to serve in that capacity. So I got out of the Army, and then I had to go to undergraduate school at Savannah State College, and then from Savannah State I went to a school, a Methodist seminary, and I'm Baptist, but I went through a Methodist seminary, Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, Candler School of Theology, and from there is when I decided to come back into the Army. Now, I always knew that I wanted to come back in. So let me say a few things before I speed on to coming on active duty. So in undergraduate school and seminary, I pastored a local church. I did that for like 6 years, and was the joy of my life. An absolute thrilling experience, hard, challenging at times, but it gave me an opportunity to learn a little bit about being a leader of a congregation and also loving God's people. And so in 1993, I resigned from that church, and in 1994, I came on active duty. And my first assignment on active duty was in an artillery battalion. And remember, I was a field artilleryman. And so I went right back. I says, God has a sense of humor. He put me right back where I had at least some experience, and I knew what it meant to serve an artillery battalion.
And so from that point, as you well, let's take a step back. So as you were working through this, as God was moving in your life towards becoming this Army chaplain, what were the things that you could kind of see where God was confirming that call for you along the way? What were the bright shining spots where you like, oh wow, God, you used that to show me that this is the right path for me?
Yes. Yes. So while I was in undergraduate, here's the other thing that's really interesting, and I guess a little bit of, I say again, God's humor. So while in undergraduate, I was in ROTC, and I was also branched field artillery. Here we go with this artillery thing again. I was branched field artillery, and so I had a regular Army commission, and I asked the Army if I could delay coming on active duty to go to seminary. And guess what? They said yes.
Yep.
And when the Army said yes to me delaying to come on active duty, that to me was yet another sign of God's providence, God's hand moving in my process and allowing me to see that He was in the midst of it, that He was absolutely leading and guiding and directing me in the path that I should go in. So this thing about artillery keeps coming up over and over and over again. And while it kept coming up, I could see the hand of God moving to push me, or at least to lead me and guide me in the direction that I should go in.
Okay, great. And sir, I'm glad you brought up the ed delay, because we have a number of our ROTC students that are in the process and going through that ed delay. And sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating, figuring out what the Army wants, what the Chaplain Corps wants, and all that. And hearing that is kind of part of that process that God uses is awesome. I think it's really good. So thank you for sharing that with our ed delay folks. So this is kind of a weird question, because it's almost like asking you to pick your favorite child. What was your favorite assignment so far?
I could tell you, a lot of chaplains reflect back on their battalion days, right? Because that's where you really, in terms of the sense of team with the unit, that's where I probably felt it the strongest. My first battalion was, of course, an artillery battalion on an artillery base at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And, that wasn't necessarily my favorite assignment, but it was an opportunity for me to really connect with the soldiers, with the leaders, and also with the families there in that particular unit. If I had to pick one of my favorite locations, and here we go again, my favorite location would be Joint Base Lewis McChord. Okay, even though I just had an assignment in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And when I was stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord, guess what? I was assigned to an artillery battalion again. And it was in that artillery battalion that I had a really, really inspiring, couple inspiring commanders. I remember the first morning I did PT with the team. My XO, he brought the commander over and says, "Hey, sir, I want to introduce you to our new chaplain." And so the commander comes over. He has a toothpick in his mouth, and he shook my hand, and he says, "A chaplain that comes to PT, huh?" And he took off and he went on his run. So I can tell you that that was probably really one of my favorite locations. And again, it was a battalion chaplain assignment. What a great opportunity to really touch people right where they are. No layers between you and them. You pretty much do everything they do. You go where they go. Wherever they train, you train. It was really probably one of the best assignments when I was in the battalion level, at the battalion level, and also at Joint Base Lewis McChord.
Okay. So if I'm hearing the kind of the subtle foot stomping there that you did, PT is important, right? You there, sir?
Say again?
So I'm guessing you're saying PT is important, right?
Oh, it is absolutely important. I would tell anyone, like at about 5 something this morning, I got up, I went for a run. I didn't feel like going, but I did it anyway because I know I always feel better afterwards. I always feel better afterwards. I get out, it's dark. In fact, my wife told me, she says, you need to stop running in the dark. And I told her, I says, well, Robin, I says, the reason I run in the dark is because that's the time I have to run. And as long as I'm, have some kind of reflection or reflective gear on or what have you, I'll be okay. So I have to make a promise to her that when I'm out there, people can see me and I'm safe.
All right. So having been in ministry for so long and having just a lot of assignments here, I'm sure that you have come across some definitely some unique challenges in chaplaincy. Could you share some of those unique challenges that you've had?
Yeah, so I would say, when you go to a unit sometimes, and I could just say for me, I remember I kind of reflected on this a little bit and thought about a time when I had a commander that was so focused on the mission that he wasn't always focused on, on the families and on the soldiers. And so, again, this was when I was in an artillery battalion. So the new commander came in, and one of the very first things I did with that new commander was I really talked to him about, sir, we really need your support to ensure that we're doing programs for our families. Now, I want you to understand why that was so important to me, because I think that if a soldier is taken care of, his or her family members are getting what they need in order to remain resilient and strong, that soldier will do a better job for the unit. That soldier will do a better job for the Army. And so as a staff officer who has the responsibility for religious support in the unit and to care for and love the soldiers, I felt like, hey, it fell on me. It was part of my responsibility to ensure that commander knew that I was ready to do those things that needed to be done to ensure that we had strong and ready families to go to war or to go to training or what have you. And I will tell you, when I did that, I could tell that the commander, I kind of put him on the spot. It wasn't in front of anybody. It was just him and I. But he got his lower jaw got real stiff, and he says, Chaplain, I'm going to make sure, that I'm going to take care of my soldiers, right? So what I did after that was I started inviting him to give opening remarks at all of our programs. And lo and behold, guess what? It was something he really enjoyed doing. It was something that he was very, very good at. And it was something that he was invested in. The former commander wasn't necessarily the same way. He was more concerned about me being in the field, when we did training exercises. Although we did things for our families, we didn't do as much as I thought we could have done to ensure that they were resilient and strong and ready for whatever our nation would call upon.
Great. So, sir, you've been at the chief's office there for about a year. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you currently do for the Army Chaplain Corps?
So the first thing I'd say is, hey, look, I'm a teammate of the United States Army Chief of Chaplains, Chaplain Major General Tom Sojum. So I'm his teammate. I'm one of his wingmen, or one of the guys that kind of help hold up his arms, and I help him run.
Oh, I think we might have lost Chaplain Green. If y'all would just hang out for just a minute.
No, he's on, but his mic is muted.
His mic's muted.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find him here.
Okay, so I'm back. It looked like
There
we
you
went through a little glitch there,
Okay.
but I'm back. So what I was saying was, what I do is I help the Chief of Chaplains run the United States Army Chaplain Corps, and that's something that I do on a daily basis. It's very, in terms of the responsibility, the scope of it is very wide, and I will honestly tell you, it is something that I really enjoy doing. I've enjoyed being an Army chaplain for all the time that I've been an Army chaplain. And one of the things that kind of gets me going is the fact that I'm doing what I love and I enjoy doing. And it's connected back to serving God and serving God's people. And when I say that, one of the things I will say about being a chaplain is I'm there for everybody. I'm there for those who believe, those who don't believe, those who don't believe the way I believe, don't live life the way I live life. I am there for everyone. I'm there to care for them, to love them, and to ensure that that they have someone there that they can talk with, regardless of whatever they go through.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. So if you could tell us a little bit about, so we're sort of in this environment right now where, gosh, things in society, things in the Army, seems like everything is changing very quickly, right? I think it was the Chief of Staff of the Army put out a reading list, and one of them was "The future is faster than you think," right? Talking about how everything is changing so quickly. Very fascinating book. But what are some of the changes that you see coming in the future for the Chaplain Corps? How some of that stuff is going to affect the Chaplain Corps, and how we should be sort of prepared for that?
Yeah. So one of the things I'd say is that we have to be ready to provide ministry and support in any environment. So what I see coming in the future is that I think the world as we live in it is going to be even more complex. But in that complexity, I think as a chaplain corps, to be ready to strive in that complexity. What does that look like? Well, there are some people that's been doing certain things for quite some time in the virtual environment. We've got to be prepared to deal with the virtual environment and to meet the constituency wherever they are. There's something in the Army called the multi-domain operations, which means that, in many instances, people will be spread out at greater distances from each other. We can still provide quality, top quality religious support, even when there is distance between us and our soldiers and the family members. So I think the Corps and those who are coming in really have to be prepared to work in what I would call sometimes a complex environment, to thrive in ambiguity, and to know that if you've been called to be an Army chaplain or that your calling is not to be an artilleryman, your calling is not to be a signaleer, your calling is not to be an armorer or armor guy or an infantry. It is your calling. And if it is to be an Army chaplain, then we've got to be prepared to thrive in whatever environment, however the future looks. We've got to be able to thrive in that environment. The one thing, even though the future is changing, people still need love. People still need compassion. People still need to know that we are there to care for them. That will never get old. And the future, I don't think the future will ever erase that. People need to know that their chaplain is there for them. And when I say that, I mean that in a broad sense, in that they may not be the same, may not be people who come to your chapel on whatever day of worship you worship, but you still have to be there for them. And so the future won't change that. In fact, I think if anything, the future will demand even more of us to be compassionate, loving, and caring men and women of God.
Great. Thank you, sir. I'm glad something you said there just kind of really resonated with me. You know, the challenges that our folks that are coming in right now, some of our folks that are candidates and that are looking to assess here very soon, their challenges may look very different than your challenges. They'll look even different than my challenges coming in. You know, 8 years difference, just that small bit of time. But that common idea of love is so important. That we're still called to love them, and I think that's really encouraging for our new candidates and our newest sessions to hear. So, sir, just kind of trying to switch gears just a little bit here and talk about recruiting and talk about this idea of who the chaplain corps is looking for. So, if you could kind of give us an idea, how does the Army decide who to bring into the Army Chaplain Corps?
Yeah, so I mean, so that's it's a great question. It's about, you know, religious ministry professionals who, first of all, they have a sense of calling, right? It is something that they feel called to do. That's where it all starts. I don't think the chaplain corps wants to bring anyone in who doesn't have a sense of calling. And I'll say it like this, you know, so this ministry is different than anything I did in the civilian sector, right? Pretty much, I went home every night. I was able to, you know, get a shower and get cleaned up and all this other stuff. But in this ministry, it calls you to make sacrifices. And what the Army is looking for is individuals who have that sense of calling to be military service related in terms of their calling. And if a person has that, I think that's the most important thing. That's what we look for first and foremost. And that is so important that we periodically, that even as we deal with folks while they're on active duty, right? Because sometimes someone might say, hey, I want to go to this location or I want to go to that location, and that location may not be available, right? But the call, if the call is there, the call is something that should prompt that individual to go wherever he or she is needed. And so I would say that's the first thing. That's what we look for is, hey, do you have a sense of calling? You know, and whatever that might mean for people in ministry in various denominations or belief systems, whatever that might mean for them, that's what we look for first and foremost.
Okay. So calling is essential, and that idea of not just a calling to military ministry, but a calling to go where God is calling you, right? To go wherever God is calling you. So, awesome, thank you. So, so we look at
what's interesting?
Yes, sir.
I was going to say this, right? So rarely have I asked to go anywhere in particular. Rarely. I may have been given a choice, but you know, I can't remember where I said, hey, I want to go to a certain location. Here's the wonderful thing about this thing called ministry and calling is that oftentimes God will allow us to go somewhere, and God puts us in a particular location. And for me, oftentimes I've been able to reflect on that, and I kind of figured, hey, I feel like this is exactly why God sent me here, right? It could be in Korea, it could be in Bosnia, it could be in Hawaii, or it could be in Afghanistan, or it could be in Iraq. Wherever God puts me and wherever I am, oftentimes, overwhelmingly, I see why I'm there because of the people that I have the opportunity to impact and to minister to and to care for.
That's great, sir. We appreciate that. You know, sometimes we lose sight of that when we get assigned to a new place, and being able to put that into perspective is so very important. So we talk about calling. Calling is important. That's the number one thing. What are some other things that the chaplain corps is sort of looking for in chaplains that are coming on?
So ministry experience, right? If you don't have that experience, and if you're a candidate, what I would encourage you to do is to start looking for ways to get the experience as a professional ministry in ministry. So ministry experience, we're looking for that. And then we're also looking for folks who are, physically fit. We talked about that a little bit too, because this is absolutely a part of what we do. We're with soldiers, we're in units that are doing things, and we need to be able to keep up with them as we're doing those things. So my encouragement to everyone, if you're thinking about military ministry, get as much experience as you can, right? Serve with somebody, allow someone to help you, understand various aspects of ministry and what it might call for you to do. And then the other thing is that if you're a candidate, there are opportunities, to get some summer rotations at units and things along those lines, or in units that can help you get some experience. See, experience is to me one of the ways that it kind of helps to plow the fertile ground and prepare you for the military ministry.
Yeah, excellent, sir. Thank you. That's one of the things that we try to emphasize a lot with our candidates, is getting that good ministry experience prepares you for this. I got to tell you that I really resonate with what you say about PT. The Army sent me up here to Chicago, and I've discovered this amazing thing called Chicago deep dish pizza, and it is wonderful, but it's a little dangerous too. So right now I'm really I got to get out in PT just as it's getting really cold. So thank you for that, sir. Thank you for the motivation.
Cool.
So all right. So when we talk about ministry and getting that experience, what are some of those characteristics that we're looking for in our future chaplains? The pastoral type of characteristics that we really think are successful to make chaplains?
So, hey, that's a great question. And I tell you, at the heart of what we do is back to that word. I've said this before, right? So we have to love people. If we are in the people business as United States Army chaplains or aspiring United States Army chaplains, we've got to love people. That's where it all starts. You engage them in the unit first, right? In many instances, before they ever come to your chapel or to your synagogue or to your mosque or your temple, they're in your unit first. And if they see that you are a person who cares, a person who's compassionate, a person who's loving, a person who's approachable, all those things, that helps them to decide what that relationship is going to be like with their chaplain. One of the worst things that could happen, for a chaplain is for us to not love or to not care. If we don't possess those attributes and those qualities, I can tell you right now, just based on my years of experience, our soldiers will sniff that out in a heartbeat. They will see it in a heartbeat. That's what they're looking for. That's what they deserve. And that's what we ought to bring as Army chaplains and aspiring Army chaplains.
Okay. So do you see any...
I'd also say another thing, right? So when we're in the unit, it's also important for us to be integrated into what the unit's doing, right? Now, I know some people online may not be in a unit or may not even be totally in the Army yet, and they may be thinking about it. But it's important for us to be integrated in what they do, right? Not outside of that. So case in point for me is there have been times when I served as a pastor of a chapel congregation and my unit went to the field, right? They went to train. I made sure that my congregation was covered, was taken care of while I was gone. And I made sure I was with my unit while they were in the field. So when my soldiers saw me with them in dusty Yakima, Washington, or wherever, they knew invested. They understood that I was their chaplain and I was there with them during those challenging times as well.
Awesome. So loving the people and being where they are some of those characteristics
Absolutely.
that you. Great. So
Absolutely.
are there ways that we can develop that to learn to love better, to learn to be where our soldiers are better, ways that chaplains can do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are ways, and especially for those that are probably going through the education process now to become chaplains. So one of the biggest blessings for me in my educational process in seminary and post seminary was clinical pastoral education, CPE. I am a huge fan of CPE. Uh, and the whole process of action, reflection, action, right? So you do an action and you stop, you think about the action that you've done, and then you reflect upon that action, and then you go do that action again. So action, reflection, action. So that process to me, getting
Just hold tight, folks. I think he'll be back in just a second. Do we get you back, sir?
yes, are you still there?
Yes, still here. We lost you there for just a
Okay.
second.
So yeah, sorry about that. I tell you, it's something else here today with this technology, but it's okay. We will overcome. That's what we do. We are overcomers, and so we will overcome. So no, and I was talking about ways to to develop, as a person of compassion, love, caring, and I talked about CPE a little bit and how that's been a huge part of my growth. And even at this level, I still employ those same attributes. I still go through this whole thing about action, reflection, action. And the reason why I do that is I wanna really have an impact on those that I encounter on a daily basis, right? Sometimes, even if that means me going back to someone and saying, "Hey, look, I'm sorry for the way I said something, or something I did not take care of." Being a big enough chaplain, right, to the point where I'm able to say, "Hey, look, I may have even made a mistake, and I need to ask you to forgive me for that." I think that's important. So action, reflection, action helps with that process, and it helps us get to the point in our journey where we can become better. I don't think it's good to become satisfied in where we are and just kind of rest upon our laurels. We ought to always be striving to learn, to be better, to know more about ourselves, and then also to assess how we are impacting others. That's extremely important as an Army chaplain and as a minister, period, or a person in whichever faith group they might be in. It's important to reflect upon the impact we're having on people.
Excellent. Thank you for that, sir. Um, so we can develop those things. That's a wonderful point for some of our folks to hear as they're looking at the Army chaplaincy, and they're working through this call. They're feeling God's call to this ministry and experiencing all of the kind of affirmations along the way. What are some of the advice that you'd give to our folks that are considering this call to being an Army chaplain?
Hey, I would ask you to do this, right? Reach out to people who are doing it, right? Talk to folks who are currently in the process, who are doing this thing called Army chaplaincy, and just ask them about their journey. And I would ask you to think about the rewards of this journey, and then also some of the challenges, right? The rewards are a lot. The challenges, I would say, for the most part, are a few. But there are a lot of rewards, and there are great men and women out there who are currently serving in uniform, and they're in the active Army, the National Guard, the Reserve component. They are doing this and they're doing it well. And that's one of the things that I oftentimes reflect upon is I've got a great group of teammates, right? We're a total Army Chaplain Corps. We're not the Reserve Army Chaplain Corps, the National Guard Army Chaplain Corps, or the active Army Chaplain Corps. We are the United States Army Chaplain Corps. And as the United States Army Chaplain Corps, I would encourage you to just reach out and talk to those who are currently serving in one of those compos, and just see what they have to say about the ministry experience and the opportunity to be where soldiers are and to help soldiers and their family members and others as they walk this journey.
All right. Great, thank you, sir. So, and I've kind of asked you this, we touched on it a little bit, but where do you see God using chaplains throughout the Army in the future? You know, we talked a little bit about that idea of change. Where do you see God really using us?
Yeah, so you know that when I think about that question, I really I see God using us at all levels of the Army. All right. And here's what I mean by that. The folks we encounter in the Army, they're people. We encounter people in the Army, and they serve at various levels. I've had the opportunity to serve commanders at the 4-star level, the 3-star level, the 2-star level, the 1-star level, the colonel and the lieutenant colonel level. And one of the things that is absolutely common is the fact that they are people. And they all, at some time or another, you know, they look to their chaplain for support. So in the future, I don't really think that is necessarily going to change. I think that if anything, people will continue to look for those touch points with their chaplain. And it doesn't matter what kind of unit you serve in. I've been an artillery chaplain. I've been a sustainment or logistics chaplain. I've been an aviation chaplain in combat. I've been a division chaplain, a brigade chaplain. I can tell you at every level, the common denominator is the fact that we get to engage people. And so I think if we keep our fingers on that particular pulse, the pulse of the fact that we are there for the people, that will help us to do well regardless of what's going on in the world and regardless of where we serve. If we can make that connection, and that connection, I tell you, my friends, it's very, very important to make that connection. If we can make that connection, then I think we will do what God has called us to do, and that is to be there for God's people.
Thank you for that, sir. Sometimes we can lose sight of that idea that you know, it is about being there for God's people and get distracted by all the different changes. But that is a great word for us to keep our eye on that thing that God has called us to do, and loving people in these different situations. So thank you for that, sir.
Yeah.
So if we could now, I want to transition a little bit to some questions, because in our chat here, we've got some folks that are asking some pretty good questions specifically for you. And so I'm going to give a few of them to you and see if you can answer these for us off on the fly. I got a really good one here from Debbie. And she says, sir, how do you balance the high goal of excellence and the drain of perfection?
Yeah, what a great question, right? So I kind of mentioned it a little while ago, and it's what makes me get up early in the mornings when I don't feel like getting up. The excellence part comes from my sense of calling and who I represent as a United States Army chaplain, right? That's the excellence part. So whatever I do, I am doing it as unto my God. Okay, so that's the excellence part. The part that can become draining is the part where the days are long, all right? And there is, very, in many instances, a little bit of a break between what I do on a daily basis. So what I have to do is be very, very intentional about caring for myself while I also care for others. And then I would also add so that I can care for others. So what that looks like for me is going back to the part where I have time with my God in devotion. So that's my spiritual exercise, and then also my physical exercise. The thing I did this morning when I got out, I ran PT, and I said I always do it because it makes me feel better. It's the same thing with the spiritual. My devotion this morning was on humility, being humble, and realizing that God has called me to something bigger than myself, and that involves taking care of those that I encounter on a daily basis. So the way I balance that is I make sure that I don't neglect those things. I don't neglect the exercise. And most importantly, I don't neglect the spiritual fitness part where I take time to read God's word and to reflect upon what I feel God is calling me to do. That, or at least to strive to achieve some sense of balance, right? But I'll throw another word in there, and that's the word integration. I have to be sure that I'm integrating those things into my life. And here's a piece that I think is extremely important. My family has to be a part of that process as well. So I have a wife that I've been married to for 36 years. I have a couple kids, a son. Goal is to ensure that I am making some effort to engage those people on a daily basis. And that's what I do to kind of maintain some sense of balance.
Yeah, thank you for that, sir. That's a really important part, really important point that unfortunately sometimes I think we can get on autopilot and we just go through the motions. And what you're saying there is so important. It's such a great reminder.
Yeah.
So we have another question here from Corey. He says, how was that feeling when you were able to finally combine your love of Christ on the personal side and be able to bring that into your Army life?
Yeah, I like that question, right? Yeah. That's exhilarating, right? Because the thing that I oftentimes look at is I says, wow, I get to do what I do in the context of my calling all day long. And a lot of it is really, really good stuff. And then there are times when I have a little bit of a challenge, right? Where it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, especially when you see people going through different things in life. But that's the part where I just, in the context of my calling, I'm sitting here today talking to you in the context of my calling. That brings a lot of joy to me, and I can tell you it's what makes me, hey, put this uniform on and do that at a level that that honors God and honors God's people.
Awesome. So we've got another here because you mentioned earlier about our chaplain candidates, and like I said, we've got a number of our chaplain candidates on here, and a lot of them are applying for active duty. And so I got a question here. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it here for you, but I think what they're trying to get at is what specific types of military education or experiences that are out there in the candidate program are going to most help them when they're looking to go active duty.
Yeah, I know some individuals have worked at different offices. Like I know some of my peers years ago, they came on and they did a 45-day stint at a garrison chaplain's office, or they did a 45 at a chaplain's office where they might have had some touch points at the battalion and the brigade level. Those experiences to me really it gives you an opportunity to kind of see what happens on a daily basis in a unit. And what I would ask you to do is, you know, as the candidates, especially as you're seeking to come on, hey, look for those opportunities probably during the summer, when you have a chance to apply for some type of internship or what have you, so that you can get more experience or at least see more about what the chaplain corps might demand from you when you come on. I always think it's a great thing, a great opportunity to kind of test things out and see, you know, hey, what is this really about? And that again goes back to my earlier conversation about really, you know, spending time talking to others who are in the midst of this, who are doing it on a daily basis. I hope that answered it.
Yes, sir. I think that's great. So we've got a few more questions here. So we got just a couple more minutes. Of course, we've got the one winner of the major board results coming out, but I'm not going to put you on the spot for that one.
Hey, that's a great question. I'm asking the same thing. And here's the thing, though. I'll ask my teammates downstairs. It's got to be really soon. Remember that board met late because of COVID. I'm trying to, if my memory serves me correctly, I think it was supposed to meet in April, and it got kicked all the way to July. So you all should be hearing something soon, really soon. Hopefully this week we'll get word. Normally what will happen is we'll get word that it's coming out, and then normally they'll release the results like the next week. So for our teammates who've been extremely, resilient and patient in this process, we understand. I hope we can get those out to you here soon.
Well, sir, that one wasn't from me. That one doesn't affect me, but I won't mention the chaplain that asked it though.
No problem at all. I think it's a great question, to be honest with you. I thought about that this morning, to be honest with you. Yeah.
So we'll got another question here for you about balancing relationships. So this individual, Dennis, he was asking about how you balance those relationships with your counterparts at the RSO. I'd like to expand that though a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about just the importance of and how you balance relationships? Because as you said earlier, you know, we have to love people, we have to connect with people, and so our business is relationships. So how have you in your career, how have you found the best way to balance all of these relationships?
Yeah. So if they're talking relationships with other chaplains, I think that's a really, really, really important question, right? Because one of the first things I remember when I came in is we talked about collegiality, right? Being collegial with a imam, being collegial with a rabbi, being collegial with a priest. Now, one of the things I'll tell you, part of my history that you don't see in my bio is the first imam that came into the Army in 1994 was in we called it Chobik back in the day, in my Chobik class. And he and I have remained very close friends, even to this day, right? That I think is extremely important, that when we work alongside other religious ministry professionals, regardless of their denomination, regardless of their background, I think that, you know, sort of the old saying, charity begins at home. Well, I'm going to say charity begins in the chaplain corps. It begins in the corps, right? And what I mean by that, not that that's the starting point for us having charity or love, but that it ought to reside in the United States Army Chaplain Corps. People ought to be able to look across the formation and see chaplains and realize that those chaplains care for each other, are professional with each other, and can also be there for each other. I'm at Fort Jackson and I'm staying in the hotel, and the hotel I'm staying in has a big picture of the 4 chaplains. And those 4 chaplains who were on the USS Dorchester, all from different denominations, all from different faith groups, all from different backgrounds, but they made a plea, they made a commitment. And that commitment was that while that ship was sinking, they were going to lock arms and be there for each other and give their life preservers over to their soldiers. That's what we should do for each other. We should care for each other at a deep level, and at a level that when others see it, it makes them admire and take notice of the love that exists among religious ministry professionals. If we're chaplains, we have to have that love, and we've got to be able to cross the divide on the differences and not necessarily focus so much on those things, but focus on what we have in common, right? We're all human beings in the United States Army, doing our best to deliver religious support, direct religious support to our constituency, that is soldiers, family members, and DA civilians. If we can do that, I can tell you, boy, relationships it's going to be a cinch. And not only that, people are going to be drawn to us because of the way they see how we take care of each other. That's extremely important. So I appreciate that question.
Thank you, sir. Well, we really appreciate the time that you've given us this morning. We know that you're a very busy man, and we thank you for coming and being a part of this. For those that are on this call, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be a part of this time. If you have questions about joining the Army Chaplain Corps, please send us a message, email us. We'd love to talk to you about your call to ministry and help you in any way that we possibly can. So, sir, again, thank you for this. I'm gonna put you on the spot one more time, if I could. I'm gonna give you a moment to say anything that you want, kind of in closing to all of us. But I would ask you, sir, if you would close us in prayer and specifically remember those that are working out this call to ministry. If you could say a special prayer for them, we'd really appreciate it. So, sir, I'm going to turn it right back over to you to close us out.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate that. And thank you, and your team for all that you've done, Chaplain McCraney, and really for this opportunity to speak to this group today. As I think about my kind of sort of a closing, here's something I want you to think about, right? If this is something that you've been called to, I can tell you that in many, 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 many instances, this ministry will bring you a tremendous amount of joy. It'll bring you a tremendous amount of joy. It has brought that to me, and it's not because of what I've achieved from a rank perspective. It's mostly what I've achieved in terms of relationship with other soldiers and leaders throughout my years. There are people today that I feel like I am closer to than the folks I grew up with because I served with them during challenging times. And what I would encourage you to think about, if you feel like this ministry, this is a calling, I would encourage you to seriously pursue it and also do those things that you need to do to be prepared to do it. I believe it's extremely rewarding, and I can't see myself doing anything else after all these years. I've had a wonderful time, and it's been a very joyous ministry, and also opportunity to meet people from various walks of life. And I could go on and on about that, right? In terms of feeling a level of accomplishment, it's about what I've been able to help people walk through in their journey. So it's about being where people are. And if you feel like this is, God is calling you to be where people are, this is a great place for you, because in the Army, we have them all over the place. We have them, just in the United States itself, multiple duty stations and postings. I mentioned, for me, I've been stationed in Korea. I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to Iraq. I've done ministry in Japan. I've done ministry all over the world. I would have never had that opportunity to do that had it not been for the United States Army Chaplain Corps. I don't think I would have. So if you're serious about this, we want you on the team. If you have a sense of call, we absolutely want you on the team. And I look forward to, meeting you and seeing you one of these days. And again, Chaplain McCraney and team, thanks for a great opportunity. And as I prepare to close, I would like to say a prayer for those who are considering this ministry opportunity. Please bow with me. Almighty God, as we come to you today, we come with thanksgiving and praise for who you are and for the multiple opportunities that you've given us to serve. I pray for my teammates who are on the line right now, who are considering whether or not to join the Army Chaplain Corps. Lord, as we've mentioned already, it's about a sense of call. It's about a sense of identity. It's about fulfilling that sense of call. And if there are individuals out there today who have that sense of call and would love to be in the Army Chaplain Corps, I pray that you would put it heavy on their hearts and that you would allow them to join our ranks. Thank you for them, for their families, for their loved ones, for their endorsers and others who are supporting them through this journey. I pray that you would continue to look upon them and bless them in a special way. Now, may your peace and your joy and your sense of call continue to abide with each of them. For it's in your holy name we pray. Amen. And with that, I say, for God and country. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it.
Hey, this has been a highlight of my week, a highlight of my day. And I want to say, really, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. And I look forward to seeing some of you on the team here one of these days. If you're considering doing it, my encouragement to you is, hey, take that step. If God's leading you that way, absolutely take that step.